So, thank you for coming on here and speaking with me because I think you have an interesting background. And yeah, I think starting this thing off, we can kind of just get right into it, and you can give a little bit about what you do, where you're going, maybe a little bit about your philosophy, your motivations, and anything else you want to tell the world, and then we can get into it.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, thanks for inviting me on. So I'm Dr. Emily Kulpa. I'm a clinical pharmacist and a psychedelic medicine consultant. And my background is in medication therapy management and managed care. And then I've actually worked in healthcare for over, I think, 14 years as in pharmacy, as a pharmacy tech, pharmacy intern, and then as a pharmacist. And I think for me, it was just kind of realizing that conventional medicine maybe doesn't always work for people. So I just kind of saw, people who were put on medications have bad side effects or it wasn't working for them. And I think we really don't focus a lot on lifestyle changes. So I think diet and exercise, are really keys to health and wellness. So I kind of, just in my own personal research, was kind of looking more into integrative medicine and functional medicine, really getting into the root cause of things and taking a more holistic approach to healthcare. So, and looking at patients' lifestyle as well. So really taking into consideration like mind, body, soul, and giving them options. So the use of a whole bunch of different modalities. So kind of combining conventional medicine with alternative therapies, things like aromatherapy, acupuncture, meditation, massage, dietary supplements, CBD cannabis, and even psychedelic assisted therapy. And so in my search for some of these alternative therapies, I came across psychedelics being used as an alternative treatment for mental health. And that just kind of started me on my path into this industry or into this world, I guess.
That's awesome. So what spurred you down the road, essentially? Like, what was the great awakening for you to say, hey, there's a different way to do this?
Yeah, I think it was just spending so much time working with people and hearing how a lot of patients aren't validated by their providers, by the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are certain things where, not everything maybe shows up on some of the tests that we, routinely screen for, or things that we test in modern medicine, especially if there is some kind of spiritual or emotional kind of thing going on, you're not going to find that on a test. And then also myself as a patient. So I'm not only a pharmacist, but I'm also a patient, and I've struggled with my own issues, depression and anxiety as well. And I just didn't find that antidepressants really worked well for me. And then I've seen in a lot of my patients that they just weren't working well for them, or that they've experienced, really bad side effects, or ended up switching from one to another, or a medication will cause some kind of side effects. So then the prescriber will add on more medications. And so I just started to feel like we're prescribing medications to address symptoms and not really the underlying cause. So for me, I think something like depression, I just think it's a complex etiology. And I don't think it's something as simple as a chemical imbalance. I think there's a lot more going on, and we need to address something like that holistically.
Yeah, that's great. Do you see that as the new formula for mental health, kind of like a, not necessarily psychedelic integration, but just a holistic integration altogether, like taking care of your whole being? Like, is that kind of where we're moving?
I think so. I think that's where we need to move. And I'm hoping with psychedelics, as this is kind of like a paradigm shift, that this will help, our healthcare system overall kind of shift in accepting, something like functional medicine or integrative medicine, and kind of looking at people holistically, because there's a lot of gaps in medicine. A lot of people, I think, feel kind of stuck and frustrated because, they get referred to one specialty. If they can't fix it, to another specialty, and then you're brought back to the original person, kind of like round and round you go, and no one's really addressing the underlying thing. And I think it's, not that the providers don't care. I think it's just, we're kind of taught in this sort of like medical model, and you just prescribe stuff, and that's how you go. And we just don't have enough time. I just think, especially for pharmacists, they're understaffed. So are the doctors. They, you can only spend so much time with them. And it's because they have certain quotas to meet because of these like big healthcare systems. So yeah, that's really unfortunate. But I think that's where we have to go.
Yeah, because I see that route as more toward actual healing. When the system that we have currently, I see it as more of just mitigating symptoms until somebody feels kind of okay. Like, just like getting rid of almost like numbing effects in a way. When you take the holistic whole body spirit approach, whatever you want to call it, it's more of a, like, you truly heal as a being, like a deep rooted things that normally you wouldn't even pay attention to. Like if you, meditate, take psychedelics in the correct form, or just generally just take care of yourself. It's a way to truly approach the human experience from a form of truly growing and changing yourself and healing. And that's what we need. When the old system that we have is just it's just a for-profit way to just hand out things to keep the population subdued in a way. It's just like putting a Band-Aid on a cut that just keeps getting wider and wider, and you just keep putting more Band-Aids, and you never stop the bleeding, and you never essentially heal. And that's kind of what we need to adopt, more of like a system of actually not treating symptoms, but just like treating somebody's soul, somebody's spirit, just healing their spirit. And that is that's huge. But I think plant medicine can help us get to that. It's kind of like a switch, like a catalyst to show us the way of approaching what it means to be a human and how to take care of yourself. Do you think we can do this without plant medicine? Like, do you think it's possible? Do we have enough time? Like you talked about, is time of the essence in plant medicine, like psilocybin, DMT, ayahuasca, whatever it is? Are these things kind of what we really need in this moment?
I think so. And I think you're right. We need true healing. And we need to give people the tools to do that. I just don't feel like, a lot of us don't learn in our home environments, how to process emotions, how to talk about feelings, how to even set up like a good daily routine for yourself. What does nutrition really mean? Because, even I think the food pyramid, maybe not the one now, but before, a lot of the companies behind some of those studies pushing certain foods, it's like, well, there's these companies who, they care about the profits. So they're pushing dairy, or they're pushing, this type of thing. So yeah. And when I worry about psychedelics too, because it's like, we have a lot of companies kind of coming into the space, and I'm like, well, wait a second here. It's again, they're just focused on the psychedelic assisted therapy. But I'm like, well, what about the other missing pieces? Because in medicine, if they think that the primary care provider or somebody else is going to be taking care of that, they're not. So we're really missing that holistic piece. And I agree with you. I think psychedelics can really catalyze change. That's kind of how I see them. I see them as a tool to be used, along with all of these other tools and modalities. And I think it can catalyze change and allow us to kind of gives us a window of opportunity, right? To like change our thoughts, evaluate our thoughts, and change our behaviors. And so I think, of course, preparation and integration, is really key. But I also feel like having some kind of health coach or somebody else who can help you deal with some of the other areas that maybe a therapist, isn't going to help you with,
Yeah. Is that your role? Do you see that as what you want to
Yeah,
do?
I definitely see. Yeah, I think that's my role. That's kind of what I'm trying to do now in my consulting business is approaching things from a more holistic perspective and really focusing on lifestyle changes, kind of in complement to what a therapist would do. And I think this is such a good role for pharmacists. And I think we're kind of missing from the puzzle. And so I'm one of the co-founders of the Psychedelic Pharmacist Association. So we started a nonprofit to really advocate for pharmacists to be involved because, they're drugs, they're medicines, whatever you want to call it. Like, that's what we do. We're medication experts. And I kind of feel like we've been left out a little bit. And I really see us having a role in screening. I think we could even facilitate in something like psilocybin, where it's more like of an inward process, where you're not doing therapy during the experience. But I think, we're knowledgeable. We have our doctorate degree. We do a 4-year professional degree, like a medical doctor, like an MD, or like a naturopathic doctor, like an ND. So we have some of those skills. And, I really feel like we're a systems type of thinker. And I think pharmacists are just kind of a holistic thinker because we have to know about every single condition and all the medications and kind of like, how is this affecting the patient? We don't break it down into certain body systems like how medical doctors usually think about it. And I also think we can play a role in, health coaching and helping people maybe integrate the experience or promote these lifestyle changes in a way that maybe a therapist isn't focused on. Because you need somebody to do some of the emotional processing, right? But then you need somebody to help you do some of the other things. And I also think we could be a big role in antidepressant tapering. So that's such a huge thing. I think, I think antidepressants numb people to their emotions. And I really think psychedelics kind of help you become more aware of them and more in touch with your emotions and being able to process them more. And now with antidepressants, I think some of the standard guidelines are to taper them off over 4 to 6 weeks. And what we're finding out is that is just way too fast. And a lot of people are having horrible withdrawal symptoms, horrible anxiety, depression, those brain zaps, those weird electrical sensations in your brain.
Yeah, I've heard about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, things like insomnia, vertigo, dizziness. And I think it's because the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want to admit that you become physically dependent on these things. They, when we talk about alcohol or benzos, they call it withdrawal symptoms. But with antidepressants, they call it discontinuation symptoms. I'm like, no, it's withdrawal. Your body is physically dependent on this. And if you don't take it, you're going to have these things. And so a lot of providers aren't aware, maybe because they haven't probably experienced them themselves. And I have, and I know how horrible it was. And I, had to do a very short taper, and it's horrible. And then people, besides just the withdrawal symptoms, they're more highly likely to relapse them and go back into a depression, or even, have it worsen and start to have suicidal ideations. And some of these withdrawal symptoms are so bad that people start to become suicidal because they just can't handle it anymore. So I think I would like to promote more of a very slow, long taper over months to years, even in some cases, for people who are highly sensitive to this.
Yeah.
And that's just not what's happening.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't tell you about that. How easy is it to get an SSRI or an antidepressant? If I come up to you and I say, hey, I'm not feeling too good. I haven't been feeling good for the past, 5 years of my life. I'm feeling really down, really depressed, doctor. What do I need? How
I
easy?
would say it's super easy to get prescribed an antidepressant. I had one of my friends tell me, they got COVID, whatever, went through the whole thing, went for a follow-up, didn't even talk about anything about depression. And the prescriber just recommended that they start an SSRI.
Wow. And those
They
are
didn't
highly
even,
addictive, right?
yes,
SSRIs.
I
Wow.
would say people get pretty like physically dependent on them, and it depends on which one. Some are harder to come off than others. And I'll say the first one I was prescribed was, I was, no assessment was given. I wasn't even recommended therapy or anything. It was an OBGYN, so like a woman doctor, right, who prescribed my first SSRI. And
Wow.
and then I thought, I'm doing something good. I'm trying to seek help. This is like the right thing. And looking back, I'm like, wow, they didn't even do an assessment. It was like such mild symptoms. Looking back, like I probably would have been fine with some medication, a little bit of therapy, right? But then that just kind of started me on this antidepressant type of hopping in the future.
Mm.
And I just worry that that's the case for so many other people out there.
It is. It's the case for probably millions of people, which is
Yeah,
insane.
it is.
And if you try to speak about it, it seems like the stigma is like you're hating on the person for like trying that. But like, sometimes I've said things to people and they're like, well, I can take it if I want, if it makes me happy. But I think it's just more so of like looking at it like there's a better way to approach this. And, literally these people unfortunately are addicted to something. Like there is a physical addiction to these drugs that are easily accessible. And it's kind of scary. It's very daunting to think about that.
Yeah, it is really scary. And, if people choose to take them, that's their choice, you know? Um, and, I'm sure they do help in some cases for some people, but I do not think they are meant to be on for a long time.
Yeah.
I could see them being used, kind of as a crutch in the short time to help you build some of those coping skills,
Mm-hmm.
build some of those lifestyle skills, when there was no other treatments, which now we know there's ketamine, is out there now. Psychedelics are being researched. So now we know there's other treatments, but when there wasn't, all you had was SSRIs. And now I'm sure there's millions of people who don't want to be on them, who are kind of almost stuck on there, because I've heard of so many people who've tried to taper off. They can't. It's just too hard. They have to go
Yeah.
back on. Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. Can you explain what, if you want to get into it, you don't have to, what psychedelics, the experience that you have with any kind of psychedelic substance and what they did for you, and yeah, anything else you want to tell us?
Yeah. So I had a legal experience in the Netherlands. So I was very fortunate to be able to travel out there a few times and have an experience with the legal truffles. And I think it's just like, I don't know, it's like something I've never experienced before. It's very indescribable. It's hard to describe the experience.
What was
Yes.
Emily before, and then what was Emily after?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think before, my mind was a little bit more open to begin with. So I'd finally been off of antidepressants for maybe like 5 years at that time. So I feel like I've had some time to kind of recoup. Really started working on myself, really wanted to improve myself. And I think that's why I stumbled across psychedelics to begin with, because not only for patients, but for myself, I'm like, something's missing. Like I'm trying, but like there's a missing piece here for me, at least. And yeah, I think after the experience, it's weird. I feel like it's like, it changed me in a way where like very subtle, like subtle changes that I would just start to notice after the experience, like randomly. Or I think it just allowed me to be a bit more open. I think it made me a bit more sensitive to my surroundings, which could be a positive and negative, because I'm already a pretty sensitive person and very sensitive to the external things. But It's changed my thinking a little bit. I think it's helped me become more self-aware, um, and kind of challenge some of my own beliefs, and give me hope as well.
Mm,
You know,
that's a big one.
um, and it's like, yeah, like I would just kind of catch myself like I did something different. I thought about this differently, or I'm seeing this and I'm like evaluating it in a different light. I can see this from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Like
And I just
unconscious.
realized, yeah, I just realized that I had changed in such a subtle way.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's helped me really want to um, continue to do my meditation practice and journaling, and kind of helped me see how, yeah, when I exercise in the morning, that helps me calm down. I feel really good from that. Um, yeah, I don't know, it's hard to describe for me, but
Mm-hmm.
kind of like that, just like I just realized I changed subtly, and my thinking's kind of changed, and um, yeah, my mood, maybe has improved. But for me, and I know I have a lot of work to do, that I find myself like after a while, I'll be kind of stuck, and I'm like, okay, I think it's time for me to have an experience again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's been my experience. What about you?
Hmm. I mean, it's in the same aspect. It's, it just allowed me to approach my being from a different, like you said, perspective, like just switching up the point of view in a way, and looking at myself in a way that I never really was able to. Um, Absolutely blew my mind, felt like emotions, felt like what the meaning of love truly was, and the underlying concept of love. I never really, like, I don't know, just showed me a different light in that. Um, and it showed me the path, like you said, like it showed me a way to live my life, to know that I had to kind of get my shit together, as they say, just kind of like, oh, like, take care of my being, know that I am truly responsible for my own happiness in this life. And this is over multiple times too. This isn't just one time I'm talking about. This
Yeah.
is like using it as, like you said, like knowing when I have to use it as like a sacramental medicine. And I haven't used it in a long time though, so it's interesting to me. The biggest thing that I think is interesting about these medicines is that they're not, like we talked about with the SSRIs. You don't become dependent on them. If you just approach them like a tool and use it when you need it, they can be very helpful allies to the whole journey, this whole process of life. Because I haven't done it probably like over a year and a half, but the lessons that I learned while in those states have stuck with me, and that's huge, because there's no physical dependency, there's no withdrawal symptoms, yet I'm healing myself of certain ailments, like that I would have to use SSRIs for, probably, or antidepressants. It's very peculiar to me how it's just like a 4 to 6 hour session can heal anxiety and depression in such a like, it's just a quick way, because I used it also like when I get certain, like, it used to be for me like when I needed some kind of guidance, like some kind of positive guidance in my life. And I would just be like, all right, well, I'm gonna go turn to the mushrooms and see what this has to show me. And it would, like, if I used it with the right intention, which I think is important for everybody to go into it with the right intention. And if you do it in the right setting, in a controlled, safe environment, you can inspect yourself from a whole nother perspective that would probably take years of, meditation, or just do, like, on the reg. Seriously, like, these things are so powerful to for us to be able to change, like we began this conversation on, like, it allowed me to become a new person and approach life in a new way. And like, I don't I took up yoga. um I write sometimes. I do this podcast. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
I would do any of these things without these plant medicines kind of like giving me like a little help along the way. And it, like you said, it's a very indescribable way of help, in a way that they interact with us. It's just like on an unconscious level. These things allow us to open up things inside of ourselves that normally would take a very long time. And it's the aspect of confronting certain emotional states that we kind of shy away in our regular life. I think there's something about, because when you do a mushroom trip or whatever, whatever it is, I just have a lot of experience with mushrooms. It's like not always fun, but it's a healing, it's not something like, drinking alcohol. It's something you take to like, all right, well, this next 4 to 6 hours is probably going to be a little intense. It could be, but I'm going to do this to heal. I'm going to do this to truly change. And that is the intention that we need to set when we take these things. Because it's not really, for me, I realize it's not more so about the substance as more so as the intention. I think that's a huge thing that I learned from it. So from there, I realized I can set that intention on the reg. Like, you don't always need these things, like it's like my last time that I did mushrooms, I actually realized that I don't need mushrooms. It's ironic because we all don't, but like sometimes we do, and we need these things to show us the way, the path, the journey that is life. For me, it acted as like a reminder to show me the sanctity of life. If you want to put it very simply in one sentence, it showed me how precious this life is, and that I should love it no matter how bad or how good it is. It's a journey no matter what. And the crazy thing is that it showed me I'm not the only one on this journey. Everybody else is on this journey of, some may say it's samsara. It's a journey of finding out who we are. We're all collectively going through this crazy journey, which is the journey. I'm getting to the point. The journey is we're all figuring out what we really are. Slowly but surely, these things are shining a light on what it really means to be a human being. And it doesn't just mean you do mushrooms all the time. It's going to give you the answers. But it's kind of like I said, it's the journey. The journey is the destination. Mushrooms showed me that being a human being is going through the process, almost like a metamorphosis, of finding out what we truly are at a deeper level. And that process is the process of meditation, yoga, journaling like you do, whatever it is, exploring ourselves, really asking questions, being curious. Those are traits that I've taken from the psychedelic experience and try to keep that in my life at all times. Not always 100% like on that level, but it's possible. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question, but it pretty much comes down to showing us a different way to live. And that way to live isn't, if you go in with the right intention, that way to live is like the way, as they call it. It's the Tao. There is like, once you know. And these things can, not always, they can show you a better way to live. And it essentially makes you happier. And that's what we all want.
Yeah. And I love the way you describe that. And
thanks.
Yeah, I think for me too, it's like you said, setting intentions is really important. And for me, I find, I set intentions, and sometimes what comes up is not what I intended. And I think that's part of the process. It's like, it's weird because everything that I've been shown, a lot of it is stuff I already knew, but it's like making it apparent to me that like, hey, look at this. Hey, you know that this is going on, but like, you need to do something about it. You can't just keep, like doing these things or having these like thoughts. Some, like if people have some kind of like traumas or I don't know, things from their past that they need to work on or stuff that they need to work on and haven't. I think it kind of shows you that.
Yeah.
And maybe brings stuff to light, because I always kind of come away from it like, wow, this is so profound, but I also already knew these things. But now I know that I need to like take these steps to work on it. And I think that's part of the integration piece. I also feel like every time, I feel connected to everything. Makes me feel like we're all connected, like you said, on this journey together. The absurdity of life sometimes, just normally, even before psychedelics, I just feel like life is so bizarre sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And and it also just made me feel like there's something higher than myself, if you want to call that a mystical experience or whatever, but it feels very universal to me too. Like, no matter, I don't know what kind of background you come from, we're all connected and influence each other in some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's a 4 to 8 hours sometimes experience, and you need to prepare. And then, it can be quite exhausting and taxing physically and emotionally on someone. So you're not like, at least for me, I'm like, I don't want to be tripping on mushrooms, like once a week, because it's just such a intense kind of profound thing that, every time I think about like wanting to do it or feeling like I should, I'm like, okay, am I really ready? Do I have enough time? And this is one thing too, I think, with society. And I'm hoping with the whole psychedelic thing that we'll have some kind of like societal or like systematic change, because it's like, if we want to heal and be well, we need to take time to rest, and we need to take the time to do these things, right? Like, if you want to do yoga and journaling and all these things, like when I look at my ideal morning and nighttime routine, it takes me a long time to do all of these things, right? And if you're going to do a retreat or have an experience like that, you want to give yourself, time to prepare, right? You want to be in a good space. You want to meditate before. You want to be eating healthy. Then you want to take time. Well, then you have to have the experience. And then you want to take time to integrate, reflect. Because for me too, I feel like if I don't write stuff down and if I'm not actively reflecting on it, I'll start to forget what happens, if I don't have time to like focus on it. So in our society, like, we don't even have guarantee sick leave. We saw that with the pandemic. People don't even have guarantee sick leave. I think we need to have mental health days. Employers and companies should give people time to take mental health days to work on their health and wellness. It's like, we're going to have these retreat centers. We're going to have these psychedelic therapy centers, but who's going to have time to go do them? You're going to have to choose between what? Like your vacation or going to a retreat center, spending time with your family. Like, we shouldn't have to choose.
Yeah.
It should be like incorporated. So that's one big thing, is just like, and with maternity leave too, because so many women have postpartum depression. We're not giving these women adequate support, and that's detrimental to their health and well-being and their child's. So like systemically and so like society wise, we need to like prioritize the things that really matter. And for me, that's like rest. I mean, we're so productive as a society, it's just all about like churning out things. And, I think even that, like, even if you do psychedelics and even if you try to do all of these things, well, if you can only, there's only like so many jobs. And if you are kind of like stuck in a job or trying to figure out how to kind of get out of that grind, like that can be really disheartening, and you can kind of lose hope when you're, I think too, when you have such a beautiful, magical experience and you're thinking about, like you said, who you really are, what are you, not just what you produce or how much money that you make, but like, who are you at the core? What does it mean to be a human being? And then you have to go back to the everyday life. With all of these like structures kind of like, stuck in a box. Like, I think that can be hard.
Definitely. Yeah. That's the thing, is it's not easy. This whole process that we're talking about is not always like easy butterflies and rainbows. It's a difficult process, or it can be a difficult process that I think we're all just a little afraid to confront our demons on, kind of thing. It's just like, human beings like comfort, which is understandable, but we somehow have to show the idea that it's not like comfort isn't always good, if that makes sense. Like we have to, like the comfort that we've built, the American or Western comfort bubble of human beings has gotten us into, it seems to be a place that the world shouldn't be in. So we kind of need to look outside the boundaries of that, that we've kind of built for ourselves through the systems that we've built. It's just difficult. Like how, I don't know, how do you convince people that this is the way? Like, you know what I mean? Because like,
Yes.
it requires struggle, or at least
Yeah.
confronting our struggle too. I don't
Yes,
know.
it's I think it is a difficult process, especially when people are so stuck in, kind of like, I don't know, the norm.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me it's been kind of difficult because like I kind of feel like maybe I'm not so much in the norm, or sometimes I don't even consider myself like a typical pharmacist, just because when I work with other pharmacists and kind of tell them about my ideas and my thoughts, and they're just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like psychedelics, what? Or like, this and that, like, why? But then I'm like, well, now look at our profession now. Our profession has been taken over by corporations because we've just been comfortable and compliant with our 6-figure salary. And now, what did they do? Now they're understaffing people, they're cutting salaries, the working conditions are pretty horrible in retail pharmacy, especially. And even sometimes in hospitals when you're working nights and weekends. And it's all because we felt comfortable where we were and kind of just didn't want to advocate more for ourselves, or we didn't, see that we could change things in a different way and just let other people kind of do things for us. So as a profession overall, I think that's something we really struggle with. And we need more people to be like innovative and open-minded when it comes to things like healthcare and just a lot of things in general.
Yeah. Well, that's where you come in.
Definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing that I'm super passionate about, is just kind of changing like healthcare overall and how we think about stuff, and also like how we live our lives, what brings us meaning, what's really important. And so for me, that's really rest and like my own freedom too. So for me, I live kind of people talk about that like minimalistic lifestyle. And that's because like, I don't want to be tied to a mortgage, right? That's forcing me to have some kind of job, right? Where I have to be working for a corporation or something. So, I am very cognizant and conscientious about not trying to tie myself down to stuff, and really being able to, travel when I want and keeping my expenses low. Like I've had the same car for 10 years now because sure, I could have graduated with my PharmD. That's a big thing. Everybody went out and bought a brand new car, but I'm like, okay, a car might make me really happy, like buying a Tesla or something. That's super cool, but in the short term, it's not really going to bring me like true happiness in the sense of what I really value. And I think I've just become more aware of that, like as I've gotten older. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Buddhism 101 right there. Is that what you got from the psychedelic experience? Like, is that how you came to these conclusions of the transitory nature of our world, where everything is temporary?
I think I've had a little bit about it before, but then I would get kind of sucked back in to the norm very easily. And so, yeah, I think maybe with psychedelics, it's kind of helped me really stick to what I believe in. I think one of the first times I realized I didn't need much was when I was lucky to do a pharmacy rotation on the island of Maui in Hawaii for a couple of months. And I'm like, it was just me, my suitcase, and the beach. And it's just like so laid back there. I don't know. It just feels very magical. So much nature, and just, I don't know, being by the ocean is so magical. And I'm like, yeah, all I need is like some good people, being at a beautiful place, and I'm just doing my thing. And I just have my suitcase, and I had so much stuff. I had like a whole bunch of crap in storage, and I just realized I literally didn't need like any of it. So
That's
that was
awesome.
one of the first times it was really eye-opening to me, just like, oh, what is all this stuff I've been collecting? So yeah, I just tried to like not have so much stuff. I feel like the more stuff, the more complicated, the more things I have to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the future. I think the world is moving toward a slowly more minimalistic way of thinking. We just have to deprogram ourselves from the norm, the idea that we've been programmed our entire life on, which is material goods are going to make us happy. The more and more and more, and you'll be happier, happier, happier as you get more and more and more. But that is obviously, not how it is. We've just been pretty much our entire lives shown that, like, yeah, this is it. This is how you get happy, man. You get the car, you get the house, you get all of this. Look at this. But it's not, that's not the way. And I think that's the process of yoga, the process of integrating plant medicines. It's showing yourself a new way. It's literally almost rewiring your brain in a different way to think differently, to deprogram yourself from the default mode network, and then live according to true happiness. Live according to the true peace that resides inside of us, and the stillness that resides inside of us, and the connection that resides inside of us. That's true happiness. Like attaining that, not material goods. That is, which it's crazy how many people are still living under that paradigm. Like, that's obviously not the way, man. But when you go out into nature and when you go out into the beach for a little bit and you just take time to just, like you said, be by yourself, reflect, feel that connection, there is this unspoken communication with the earth that will tell you that this is happiness, that like there is true happiness inside of all of us. We just have to find it first. The kingdom of heaven is within, and it's true, but it's not without. The kingdom of heaven is not out, it's within. So if you keep looking out to things, you're never going to find it where it's in. It sounds cliche, but it's actually true. Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, we all have it inside of us to be happy, but we're just so glued to the outside world. We're glued to a computer screen or some music or just anything on the outside world, like a good movie, a story or something. But it's good to take time to just disconnect and connect with what's truly inside of all of us. But our world doesn't allow that, or it doesn't like even tell us that is the way. Like, you just have to, just disconnect, put your phone down, stop listening to this podcast, go outside, take a walk, maybe just shut off the lights for a little bit, just close your eyes and just breathe and just feel how that feels to just be. Think about it, right? It's the simplest, hardest thing to do, to just be. It's ironic. It's crazy. Like, we live in a time where we can't just be, it seems, to just be still. And when you be still and just feel that connection to everything, that is happiness. Like, when you can truly reside in that universal connection with everything, that's everything, not just like, that's everything. We are everything. You know what that means? Where, like, our being is not just of this body. That is also transitory. That is also temporary. You'll come to find that. That means that your being is everything. That is not transitory. That is forever. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like these things show us a new way to view our being. And it doesn't come from anything from the outside world. It's just the hardest thing is getting on that paradigm. Like, how do we show people that that's the way? Because it's the only truth. Like, it is the truth. The truth is that we all have the ability to be completely happy in this life. Everybody. I fully believe that. If you're a human being, you have the ability to find the path and cultivate your own happiness. And plant medicines are a very surefire way to get there. It seems to be, in the using the right way. It's like a quick catalyst to show you the path, the journey, the way to happiness. But it's just like it still to me doesn't seem like enough. Like there's 7.5 billion people on Earth. I don't know, man. I think we're all
Well,
capable. It's just we got a long way to go.
yeah, I think we do have a long way to go. And I think you're spot on. I think we all have an intuition about what we're really all about and this inner healing capability, right? Because the body heals itself. So I think we have the ability to heal ourselves on this innate capability of who we are. And you're right, we need to disconnect from everything to reconnect with ourselves. And I see it looking back in my life, how I think some of my depression was maybe more existential and kind of like living this life in this society. And I'm like, something feels off here. And I
Yeah.
see that in myself, that I identified it, but it's the programming. When you're in school with a certain programming and they're preparing you for a certain, to get a job in this certain programming, and it's just like beaten into you, I think,
Mm-hmm.
repetitively, right? And especially if your parents haven't worked on themselves or haven't, found that, then I think you're kind of just, kids are like sponges. So you're just kind of absorbing everything from them too. So if everywhere you go and look, that's the thing, this is normal, you're going to have a hard time, I think, getting out of that unless you can talk to somebody who's kind of been there and done that, or maybe have your own psychedelic experience. Yeah. And I think we're going to need maybe a bigger change, hopefully with psychedelics, but I think at least in the United States too, like with businesses, I mean, corporations and have so much power, right, in everything. And I'm kind of passionate about businesses being more conscious and having a conscience,
Hmm.
right, with how they're practicing their business, because everybody needs a job, everybody needs to make money to survive. That's kind of how we survive, right, like in today's times. And I think they need to become more responsible in what kind of jobs they have. How are these jobs, like how are people working in these jobs? Are these meaningful type of jobs? How are they running their business? Not just from a sustainable, and how does it impact the earth and whatnot, but like, how is it impacting society and people's well-being? I think a lot of people are getting underpaid. People don't have good benefits. I think all of that too, kind of, businesses aren't prioritizing rest and vacation. People get what? If you get vacation, you get like 2 weeks vacation. I mean,
Yeah.
so sometimes I think that, like you're saying, I think people have an inner healing capability and some kind of intuition, but I think it can be hard when, you have to make a living, you have to provide for yourself, but then you're stuck in this kind of programming.
Yeah.
It can be hard.
Mm-hmm. I think that's where, like, I don't think we're gonna be able to do it in this generation. I think it's just gonna take multiple generations for us to truly change and adopt ways in the system of having a conscience. It just takes time. It's just it is like in today's world, it's so tough to be able to be happy or to find that happiness, to find that journey, that path, when you have to pay the bills and you have 3 kids and you barely making ends meet and you have to work 2, 3 jobs. So it's completely understandable, man. Like, I get it. It makes sense. It's just like we're gonna have to change, or else it's just, I don't know. It's just not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. We either have to become more conscious in the workplace of employees, mental health, or we have to just develop robots and the robots have to work for us and we have to stop working, because it's just like work is a drain, especially if you're doing something for 40, 50 hours, 60 hours a week that you absolutely despise. That's not your life purpose. Like, how are you going to find the path when you have to do something longer than your home? And it just mentally drains you. it's tough. I understand. Like this whole thing we're talking about is, even though like I say, like we all need to get on that wavelength, like it's tough, man. We're all just trying to survive. Like this is the struggle. We're all just trying to get through it at the end of the day. And to be able to transcend our root chakra, to be able to transcend our survival instincts to just pay the bills and put food on the table and survive and reproduce, to enable to heighten the state of consciousness, we need to take time for ourselves and do certain things like psychedelics and meditation and the whole, the whole journey and the whole path. But that takes time and effort. And if we don't have enough time for ourselves to just survive, then how are we going to find time to be able to go within? And that's what happened this year or last year with the coronavirus, where people had time from their jobs. We had like a free vacation thanks to a pandemic, and people had time off to just be at home and to just rest and meditate. And I've read stories from a lot of people on the internet that say like the past year has been huge for their time to just cultivate that stillness and peace within themselves, to find to peel the layers back of themselves, to just simply just meditate. And I blame like you said, our work environment for us not being able to do that. It's unfortunate, but it's needed in this current time. So do you think in the future we just like...
Well, it is. And I'm even like, why do we, of course we have a 40-hour work week, right? That's normal. But I'm like, well, I thought this was kind of set from like a long time ago, right? Back when there was like manufacturing jobs. And it's like the workforce is completely different. It's all tech jobs and like intellectual type of stuff. And like, why does it have to be a 40-hour work week? I really don't understand why we have to work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Plus, especially for women, right? Okay, like I don't want equality as a woman. I think I want fairness, right? Mm-hmm. Like mm-hmm. I don't want, because we're not equal. We're different. And a lot of women still bear, a lot of the child raising responsibilities and household chores, even when they have a full-time job. So that's a completely separate thing, but or like a whole nother thing that I could kind of go on. But I don't know. Why do we have to work 40 hours? Why not 32? Why not less than that? Why not a flexible schedule? Like, I seriously just don't understand why it's 9 to 5. I mean, yeah, productivity, but we are so productive as people. We are making these companies billions of dollars. I think, are we on track to having our first trillionaire? I mean, yeah. Like, who needs that kind of money?
Nobody.
People need to be able to, make a living wage and rest. They are producing so much profits for these companies. And I think we should have less work and more time to rest and enjoy life. I mean, We're making so many profits. It's like, that's what I think. And I also think we need to kind of change. It's like, who do we value in society? It just seems like we kind of revere or put people on a pedestal who are like very extroverted and charismatic and dominant, right? But what about the people who have integrity and empathy and loyalty? Mm-hmm. It's like, I think there's kind of a missing piece too of like who we value as leaders in this society and who we value as leaders in companies. And it just seems like it's people who are very dominant, charismatic, like extroverted, and we're not valuing the people who have empathy, integrity, some of these traits. I think that are needed to shift some of these like corporate models and some of the other things in society.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're slowly moving there. But yeah, it's gonna take some time. We are slowly going to that more appreciating true humanness in a person slowly. We're not quite there yet, but it's up to us to be the change. We have to, every single one of us has to embody first, that we have to go within ourselves and know what we want to embody on the outside, and that is reflected on the outside. I almost see the outside world as a mirror for our collective emotional being inside of ourselves. It's like going back to the pandemic, it's like a collective sickness. Maybe that means we're also sick on the inside as well. It's like a mirror in a way, and it's kind of like showing us something. So these people that we look up to maybe are showing us something, that we need to change, and we will. I think we will. It's just gonna take some time, like I said.
Yeah.
Where do you? So what do you plan to do within the next, I don't know, 5-10 years? Like, what is your goal?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, I'm not really sure. I have, some interests in some things I want to do. And I feel like, in this journey, I didn't expect to be here working with psychedelics. Never saw this coming. Never saw a lot of things coming in my life. It's kind of like, I don't know, things just kind of like happen. And, and I'm grateful that they happen. But in the next 5 to 10 years, I think what I'd really like to do is kind of build up my consulting business a little bit, focusing on proper antidepressant tapering, helping people kind of get connected with psychedelic medicine. So, educating them about harm reduction, getting them hooked up with, either retreat centers or, in Oregon, they're going to start offering psilocybin therapy in 2023. So trying to help people get access to these medicines as well. And hopefully with some of that stuff on a larger scale, I can kind of help shape maybe the healthcare system as an all. So I don't know if that'll be more working in advocacy, trying to fight for people, to get some of these things covered by insurance too, so it's affordable and accessible. But that's one of the reasons I moved out. So I moved out to Portland, Oregon from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, because I'm like, okay, this is where it's happening and I want to get involved. And if I can, try to help, shape it in the right way, which is also equitable access, because one thing I can see is, these therapies maybe being too expensive for a lot of the average people, to get a hold of them. And so they picked the Oregon Health Authority picked their advisory board for the psilocybin therapies. So they're going to be writing some laws and regulations, once they implement this in 2023. And it was a bit disappointing to see that they didn't have any pharmacists out of, I think, 14 or 15 people that they picked. So one of my things is advocating for pharmacists to get more involved in these roles too. So I think a bunch of different things that, I'd like to work on in the next 5 to 10 years. And also if I could get into maybe more public policy type of stuff too. The whole thing with having companies making an requirement for them to give employees mental health days and maternity leave and things like that. Some systematic change. So I don't see that happening right now because I've got so many other projects with psychedelics and my consulting business and working with the Psychedelic Pharmacist Association. But maybe in the future, I can get more involved in that type of stuff and helping with more systemic changes, or even, working for companies to help them integrate these things. So if I could work for healthcare companies to help them, have the integrative health model. What does that mean? How can we incorporate pharmacists and health coaches and things like that? Or helping businesses become more conscious and conscientious about kind of how they're running companies. So making change and helping people, pretty much. That's what I see in the next 5-10 years.
That's amazing. That's great. I have faith in you.
Thanks.
How long of a time span would you say that these things become legalized? Even if it's just for therapeutic use, how many years you think?
Well, so in Oregon, they're going to try to open up, I think, applications to start providing these in 2023. So what is that, 2 years from now, I think? Mm-hmm. So that's pretty close. I think MAPS is pretty close to getting, I think they're in phase 3 trials. So I think MDMA might be approved in the next 3 years, next couple of years for sure.
Mm.
And then psilocybin, I think the FDA designated that as breakthrough therapy for two companies, Usona and Compass. So, maybe 3 to 5 years, maybe sooner if more states follow Oregon, maybe in 4 or 5 years. So I see it happening. I think these things are going to get approved. But I also hope we have more decriminalization, because I really think all drugs should be decriminalized. So that's what they did in Oregon. So I think that's amazing that they got that passed. Because I think,
How are you guys doing over there? Is everything okay in
yeah,
Oregon?
so far, yeah.
Okay, just making sure. I didn't know if the Oregon was burning yet because of that.
No. Maybe before I got here, but not since. But yeah, but I think decriminalization is important, because it's like, these things not only can help people, treat mental health conditions, but I think they can help you just change in different ways, explore yourself, improve your overall well-being. So you might not actually need a treatment, but you just need maybe like a space to kind of have the experience, or some education on, how to best take the substance. And so maybe in some kind of decriminalization measure coupled with, I don't know, a lot of education to the general public, that'll be possible too. So I don't see it really becoming recreational, per se anytime soon. I think there's a lot of people who want it to be. But I don't know, who knows? But I would love it to be where people could go into pharmacies or talk to pharmacists about this stuff. I think we could really provide education if people, grew the substance at home. Of course, when it's, decriminalized or legal, not, I don't advocate anybody doing anything illegal, but that we could help them, help screen them and help provide them some general education if they wanted to do it in a safe space, like the comfort of their home with maybe like a trusted person. Yeah. I think that's education that we could provide. Yeah,
I agree. I say it's a crime against humanity that these things are illegal. Marijuana is a Schedule 1 substance. You know what that means? That means there's no medicinal benefit whatsoever according to the law. How do we still live in that world? Makes no sense to me. No sense. And these other plant medicines are also scheduled to, with certain criteria on what they provide to us. But like, none of that's true. Like, why are these things kept from us, man? It's horrible. Like, it is. It's a crime against humanity that there's millions of people suffering. And a lot of them don't want to even explore psychedelics because it's illegal. It's the idea of it being illegal. It's like scary. It's like, oh no, I can't do that. So decriminalization, yes, is the first step, I think, to changing people's minds and changing the world.
Definitely. I think, there is such a stigma. I mean, for me too, I when I first kind of got into this, I was like, is this something I share publicly? Because, I'm a licensed pharmacist. Is this going to like affect my licensure, or is nobody going to want to hire me if I don't work in psychedelics? But I think I just felt so compelled to it that I was like, I'm going all in. This is my truth. And for me, authenticity and just like my truth is so important. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
That's amazing. What is truth? How would you define your truth?
My truth? I guess my truth is really, I think it's like my values. I don't know. I think I just have some, like a core set of values, and they're my truth. And for me, it's about like honesty, integrity, empathy, compassion, authenticity. And I just feel like, and fairness. I feel like those things are kind of like my core values. And so all the work that I do, I really need it to be in line with my values to feel like okay. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which can be hard. It can be hard.
Yeah, living according to truth might not be the easiest thing, but it's like it's truth. You can't you can't hide from the truth. Like once you find it within yourself, there's correct me if I'm wrong, there's no one that's going to tell you to not live according to your truth, right?
Yeah. And I think the psychedelics have kind of helped me with this, like, feel more okay with that. Because I think in the past, you know, it was, bumping heads with people, right? Or like people not liking what I was aligned with. And I think now I'm more like, I'm okay, like this is who I am. And if you don't like any of that, well, then maybe we shouldn't work together.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I can't
Handle the truth.
Yeah. and going back to, like the Schedule 1 substances, it is really crazy. I mean, when you really just look at things like LSD and psilocybin on like a pharmacological level, and you look at the safety, it's like these things have a lower potential for addiction and abuse than things like caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol. And then when you look at the toxicity and this, the relative harm to people, you don't see, I think there's like maybe a couple of deaths compared to the numerous amount of harm done by things like alcohol, caffeine, and nicotine. So that, to me, when you just look at it, if you take away the stigma and all the things associated with it, and you're just looking at the data,
yeah,
to me as a pharmacist, I'm like, it's a no-brainer. This makes sense. We give people prescribed drugs that have a lot more harmful side effects and long-term effects than things like psilocybin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Like
So
nobody's
crazy.
ever died. Actually, I think maybe 2 people, 3 people. I don't know.
I think there have been a couple of cases. So I think there were some reports of serotonin syndrome from really high doses of psilocybin, really high doses. Yeah. So that's a thing, but very, very rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the numbers, man. It's there. Like everybody has access to it. You can just see it. That's the truth. It's just like these things. Isn't that crazy? Because if these things killed us, then nobody would be on board with legalizing them. But it's just like you can't argue with it. Like, look, this is like it's not gonna physically harm you. Like these things are literally not gonna kill us. To overdose on mushrooms, you need to eat like 2 ounces or something, or 2 pounds, or something like that. It's insane. The same thing with LSD, and the same thing with cannabis, and DMT. Like all of these things, you just need. It's not gonna kill you, and that's the miracle behind psychedelics. It's like they're not like you can take as much as you want. You might feel like you're dying, but you're not gonna die. It's a beautiful thing. And it's crazy that they are like when you just look at the numbers, just like you just put it plain simple, that these things are still illegal, and people will still argue against them. It's like, come on, man. Why is marijuana still Schedule 1? It doesn't make any sense. It's up there with like crack cocaine, I think meth, opiates, like, heroin, and some other ones. And then there's like marijuana thrown in the mix. It makes no sense. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. When you look at the data, it doesn't make any sense.
But yeah, that's why it's important for you to live according to the truth and spread the truth to people, because we all need to know at this point to like, it's something that you would think, and I think about this too when I take these things. I'm like, why aren't more people talking about this? Why is this like people are like, it is obviously we are coming to a point where people are talking about it, but I'm like, why is it taking so long? Like, I don't understand. I shouldn't have had to find this out myself. It doesn't make any sense. But that's why, like, getting back to it, that's why it's important for people like you to speak about this. Because education, like you talked about before, is extremely important to the whole experience. It's not just like, hey, here's an eighth of mushrooms, go out, go do whatever you want. No, you have to know about the experience behind these things. And once you have the whole package of the experience behind these things, and maybe facilitators like you and other people out there, these things can truly change the world. And it's unfortunately, we still live under, the ancient laws of the drug war. We are still under that, the curtain of the drug war for some reason, but we'll get there. It's just going to take some change.
Yeah. And I didn't always think this way about psychedelics. Right? I mean, growing up, we had, I don't know if you had the DARE program. Do
Yeah,
you remember DARE? Oh my God, yeah.
it's crazy.
Just telling you how things like, yeah, psychedelics, cannabis, of course, some of the other drugs,
They had a cop
everything's
come
bad
in.
for
It was a
you.
cop.
Yes, it
It
was a
wasn't just like a
cop.
random guy. They're like, all right, let's bring a cop and show these
Yeah.
sixth and seventh graders. Like, it's like intimidation. Don't ever touch that weed. The cops got
Yes,
like a
I
gun on their side.
actually
It's crazy, man.
stumbled upon a DARE essay that I wrote. I think
Oh,
I won a
man.
prize for it, but it was so horrible. I was like, oh my God, if you do drugs, like you're not going to college and like your life's going to be
It's
crap,
crazy.
And
That's
I'm like,
insane.
oh my God, but it's the programming. It's what they put in your head. I mean, I think even, not so long ago, like even in pharmacy school, I mean, you just kind of in your training, you're just taught like, no, these things are addictive. They're not good. They cause psychosis, all of this misinformation. You just don't even think to really look into it. You're just like, that's
Hmm.
bad. I was taught that in DARE. It's just bad. You stay away from it. So
Yeah. It's fear.
it's just so crazy now how I completely, have a different perception and view about these things.
Yeah. It's amazing. And then once you
Yeah.
get it, you don't go back. Like, once you open the door, you always know what's on the other side. That's what I like to say. And I always know that there's this other aspect, like this other way of living, this other way of perception. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's kind of like salvation in a way. Like, it's kind of saved my mental being to know that there's always hope. I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
It gave you like a sense of hope. And that's huge. We all need a little bit of hope right now. So yeah, these things give you hope. It's huge. Oh man, I don't know. We just have to keep doing our thing, Emily. I think you're one of the good ones. Uh, you know, this is just the beginning of this whole, I guess you can say, psychedelic renaissance or healing renaissance, holistic renaissance. This is a new way to approach what it means to be a human being, and it's up to people like you to facilitate that for future generations as well, to build the foundation of a better world than the one we're currently living in, because the one we're currently living in is it's a little backwards in some ways. But
Definitely.
we're in the I like to say humans are in the puberty stage in a way. It's like we're going through a little growing stages to become who we're truly meant to be. um but it takes all of us. We all have to do it, and we all have to live according to our truth, not anybody else's, not the phones, not any of these celebrities that we idolize, not any politicians, not your mom, not your dad, your own truth. That aspect that lies inside of all of us, that we all have to take time to cultivate and nourish and find, first of all. That's the truth we all have to find. It's there for everybody. And yeah, that's how we create a better world. It starts with us, and then ultimately it spreads to everybody else.
Yeah,
There it
I
is.
think it does start with us and finding that truth and not ignoring it and caring more. Because sometimes I feel like there's so many things I'm like, why doesn't anybody care about this? Doesn't seem like anybody's upset about this or talking about this.
Yeah.
And I think people, they're like, oh, I know that. But then they just choose to like ignore it and not like, speak their truth or kind of like fight for the right way, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I think this new way is, I think the right way, or like the better way maybe to live life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a better way. Just
Yeah, it's a
happier. I
better
don't know.
way.
I'm happier personally, like going through all of this crazy psychedelic experiences, doing intense yoga sessions, meditating for a long time. I don't know if I've added up the amount of time that I've meditated in my life. It's a pretty good amount of time. And doing like yoga sessions, it's not just like, I'm not just messing around, just having fun. Like, this is all ultimately just to cultivate happiness. So I don't have to be on SSRIs, or I don't have to be dependent on any kind of chemical to help me be happy. It's it's a better way to live. Like you said, you're just putting it simply, it's just becoming happy, and that's what we all want.
Definitely.
That's what we're here to do, to cultivate that. I don't think there's any other reason to be here. Like, we're here to find that what it truly means to be happy and love being alive. Yeah. It's a process,
Yeah,
though. It's a
it is a
process.
process. And I also think we need more community. That's
Yeah.
something I think is missing. Like, I don't know. I discuss this with my partner and people, and it's like, I don't know, here, everything's so separate, right? Like you leave your home at 18. I mean, most people do, right? In the United States. And so you kind of even miss your family unit. And it just seems like we're all kind of living separate lives. It doesn't really feel like we're in communities, kind of like how, back in the day, or even in like small towns, they kind of have more of a community of people to kind of interact with and rely on. And so, even when people are living in multi-generational like households, in places like Eastern Europe, I think that kind of gives them a more sense of like stability and support and community. And that's really missing here too.
Yeah. Connection, true
Yeah.
connection, real connection.
Yes.
Like truly being with somebody. And, because like I have neighbors, I don't talk to them. They're probably 6 to 10 feet away from me right now. I say hi, how you doing? I don't talk to them. I'm not saying everybody should go out and hug their neighbor, but I'm just saying like the aspect of just being more human with each other. Just actually like, maybe listening to somebody sometimes and just truly being there for somebody. It sounds very corny, but I shouldn't even have to think that it's like corny, like that. Is that just programmed in my head? I think it is. To just like, I think we should just be more accepting of us accepting others,
Yeah. And I wonder if it's a cultural thing too. So, I have a lot of European friends, and, when they came here, so I was roommates with a guy from France, and he just said in their opinions, or people that I talk to, that it's so hard to penetrate Americans. Like, it's very hard to get to a deeper level with us in conversation, and to get to that level of connection that they would have, say, with another, French person, per se. So that's really interesting to me. Is there some kind of cultural thing where, for some reason, a lot of interactions are more superficial and not deep and authentic? And I feel like I do notice it. Sometimes I feel like I talk to people, and people can say a lot without saying a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm like, where's the depth? Like, let's take this a little bit further. I don't know. That's quite interesting to me, I think.
Yeah. I think it's just we're programmed to be afraid of each other. Like from a young age, our programming has been through fear, when we haven't really been taught to be on that level with other human beings, which doesn't mean we always have to be, but I know what you mean. There is that resistance to really have true connection. And I think that's not natural. I think we're naturally innate. We're innately supposed to have connection, like true connection with people, like, actually talking about how we feel, emotions, like really, really going deep. Because sometimes you need somebody else to be there for you, to be able to open up and come to certain changes in yourself. Sometimes you need somebody else that's there for you to listen and tell you it's okay and accept you for who you are. And that's why it's important to have people like that at a psychedelic session, because that's kind of what you do on these sessions, where you confront things that you normally wouldn't confront. And if you have somebody else there to say, hey, it's okay, you're good, it's okay, let it out, you're good, we're all good, I love you. That's it. That's all we need. We just need somebody else to be there sometimes, when if we're programmed to not be there for people and just kind of like have these, like you said, just like a base level conversation. How about them Red Sox? Oh, the weather, it's rainy. Like it's not, there's no substance in that. It's like not how we are naturally deep down. I don't know. It's tough. And that's why, like, what you're doing is creating you're facilitating an environment for people to have that connection. Because I'm not saying that We all have to do that. When you go out to the coffee shop, you have this like crazy deep conversation with the guy just trying to get some coffee. We don't even have the option to really have experiences like that, or to know how beneficial experiences like that can be. True therapy sessions with these medicines that aid that in that process. We just need to be able to touch that aspect of our being somehow, like true, genuine connection with each other. And that's how we heal. Isn't it interesting? Like we heal through others. Like it starts with, seems like somebody else telling you like, hey, it's gonna be all right. You're good, man. Like we need that true like acceptance in order to sometimes just get over something. It's very interesting.
I think there is something to, healing through somebody else or with somebody else. And that was one thing, when I worked at one of the legal retreat centers in the Netherlands, it was in a group setting. So it wasn't like how they do it in clinical trials where it's just you and like two therapists. It was in a group, a small group of people. And I think that added an extra layer of healing, because it's like you went through this experience, together. Of course, separate, but like together. And I really think that kind of fostered like, bonding with those other people in the group, and they could talk about the experience that they had with each other. So I just saw something healing within itself, doing it in a group setting.
Yeah. How many of these have you been to yourself personally, like in a retreat?
On a retreat? Not many.
Yeah.
I tend to, I think maybe, it's weird. It's like I do see the healing component in a retreat. But then personally, I think most of it has been, with just myself or, somebody else that like I trust to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just because retreat settings aren't very available, right? So I have to fly all the way out to the Netherlands if I were to go to a legal retreat setting. So it's not very convenient. So maybe if the option was more readily available, that would be something that I would partake in,
Exactly.
Yeah.
You and many other people.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But that's where we're going. Slowly but surely, we're going there. And then we'll like in 2030, like 2040, we're gonna live in a completely different world. Hopefully it's still around. Hopefully we're still here. I think we will be. But I think if we are still here, it's going to be completely different. And people will look back and be like, whoa, they came from such a crazy society. Like, what kind of paradigm were they living under? But yeah, I think it's going to be, and we're going to see a lot of change within the next 10, 20 years. A lot. There's going to be a lot that's going to happen. And maybe even quicker than that. Who knows? We're getting there though, like your efforts aren't going to be in vain. All of our efforts won't be in vain. But that's why we're here. We're here to just create that better world, facilitate healing for not only ourselves, but everyone else around us, because we are everyone else around us. That's kind of like another conclusion that you can come to on this path, on this journey, is that we are all one. We are like your suffering is my suffering, and vice versa. So we're all collectively here trying to heal not only as in these bodies, but as a whole entire species, as one collective being. That's what it means to be a human being. We're here slowly, all collectively waking up to the dream of our ego that we've built up over the past thousands of years, and coming into a whole new experience. And it's happening. It seems like slow. I know I said it was slow, but relative to our existence as a species, it's extremely fast. Isn't it a crazy time to be alive?
It is a crazy time to be alive. It's also kind of an amazing time to be alive. That, you know, this is kind of the thing that we get to be a part of. this movement, trying to make things better for the future. And I think too, I wonder what the future is going to be like. And I do worry sometimes, are we still going to be here? Because of climate change and everything else that is going on. And, people are now making spaceships and, thinking about colonies in Mars, because some people just don't know. I think if Earth is going to be, if it's going to be habitable to humans, I mean, I think nature will survive, but us as a species, if we really don't do something, well, I don't know,
Yeah, that's true. We'll see. I have hope with humanity. Maybe it's blinded optimism, but I have hope. I don't know where it comes from. I think we will be. I know it looks a little bleak, but that just makes it interesting. I think we're moving to a better world. I believe that. To be continued. We shall see.
Yep.
But I think we can probably wrap this thing up
Okay.
on that note. Do you have any closing statements you'd like to tell the world before we stop recording?
Any closing statements?
Anything you want to get off your chest?
I think it's like, I don't know. And I heard one guide. I mean, he said a very beautiful quote, and I don't remember it, but it's about not going back to sleep. So, and I think that's kind of maybe my thing to the world is if you have some kind of intuition or a thought, or if you have an experience and it wakes you up and you're aware, don't fall back into the habits. Don't fall back into the norm. Stay awake and aware, and help spread that message and help others to come to those same realizations or conclusions. So yeah, I just thought it was really beautiful. I wish I could remember the quote like he said.
I get the gist of it. Don't get lost in the sauce. When you know the truth, don't get sucked back in to the matrix, man. We all, once you catch a glimpse of that truth, once you open that door, you just gotta reside in that. And I think that's what it doesn't just go away. I think I think if you were to try to shoo away the truth, quote unquote, there's no shooing that away. There is just something that always resides in me to know, to follow that and walk that path. There's no going back. Even though I might have in my habits and my certain ways of life, I may get sucked back into certain things, but that's okay. That's just what it means to be a human being. It's okay to make mistakes, but as long as I know that that's there and the path is there's something inside of me that can tell that no one can tell me isn't there, that certain aspect inside of me. And I think it's the same aspect that you're talking about, where there's nothing that can really stray me away. Maybe temporarily, maybe I'll fall into my ways for a little bit, have a beer or something. I don't know, just something stupid and just fall off the path, not be a perfect enlightened being, quote unquote. But that's just being human, that's okay. But I always know, no matter what, that it's there. There's nothing that can really stray me away.
Definitely. And I think I'll just make a plug for my consulting business. For anybody who's looking into psychedelic therapies or needs help with antidepressant tapering, get in touch. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I really want to help people kind of work through those types of things. So I work with individuals and even other therapists or healthcare professionals who want to consult maybe on their client. That's something I can help with too.
Awesome. I'll link everything. You should make a podcast.
Awesome. Oh, yeah, maybe. Thought about it.
You should. Why not? Every voice counts.
Why not?
Or just something, just even if it's just you talking, just, spitting the truth online, just saying stuff and just spreading good knowledge, whatever it is. I think it's important for everybody to spread this knowledge, to put it out to the world, because it's fighting the good fight. It's it's the good thing to do. I don't know. Like we talked about education. People just need
Yep.
to know what these are and know how powerful this is. I don't know. Just putting it
100%.
out there to you. Just
Yeah, I think that's something too I'm working on is getting my voice out there, my thoughts out there, my views, my truth. It's a work in progress.
Yep. Life is a work in progress.
It is.
On that note, Dr. Emily Kulpa, thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking to me. I think we had an amazing conversation. Yeah, I'll link everything down in the description. Thanks for anybody that listened to this thing. And yeah, it's going to be okay, guys. Let's keep it going. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep doing your thing. And yeah, look within. Disconnect. Shut off the phone for a little bit. Find some quiet time. Start there. That's where it all starts. Thanks, Emily.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. It's so great to meet you and
You
have
too.
this conversation.
Have a good night,
All right.
and I'll be in touch.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
You too.